Hey, how's it going?
Hello, hello. How's it going?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Nice to hear from you.
Yeah, yeah. I should say good. You asked me how it was going. I was being like, no. How are you, George?
Me first.
Uh, I don't actually have too much on the agenda today. I figured we might want to talk about the biggest thing being the Hyperledger or the Akapai proposed move,
Mm,
um, and also discuss how we want to do that from an Aries-vcx perspective if we want to continue forward that.
mm.
Uh, that is the main topic that I have on the agenda today. Where there's other things that you think should be on there as well.
Um, uh, yeah, I'll give a quick update on what happened with the AATH stuff. But that was really the main VCX work I did over the past week or two.
Sweet. That is not where I wanted to put that. Here I'll give at least Alberto another second, and then we'll see if other people join. Because, for instance, Kim was here last time, so
Hmm. Did you hear back on some of those base 64 URL Aries RFC topics?
oh yeah. Um, I did a PR and Timo commented on it, asking. He kind of made the comment of like, I don't think we're. Well, he wasn't quite this. He put it a little bit more better than this, but like he's basically like, I don't know if we're actually using the padding at the end or right now. At the end right now.
Hmm.
So what are we actually doing in practice? We may want to make it match that. So my thought process there was I tried to look in the AATH and run that. I was having some issues there. So I think my thought process is to actually just spin up an ACPI agent, see what it pops out for the invitation, um, and uh, potentially do same for Credo. Because if the default is they're not using padding, then uh, we should do that. If they are using padding, we still may want to just adjust the RFC to recommend not using padding or have the example not use padding. Um, so that needs additional follow up, unfortunately, I think.
I've actually ran this on Akapai. Oh, here's Kim joining. Hey, Kim.
Greetings.
Yeah. So I recently created an out of band through Akapai, I think on point 12.1 or somewhere around there. Because I was curious as well, and it did spit it out with padding, but not percent encoded. Uh,
Mm.
I'll send you an example in the chat. Oh, never mind, it's over the character limit.
Really? I didn't even know there was a character limit.
Yeah, 1,000. Well, for whatever that's worth, there's the last 1,000 characters of it. But yeah, it's got that yeah, the equals padding at the end.
I think it would be. I think I will continue that conversation on the Aries RC repo because I think that it would be wise of us to uh, probably clarify that within the RFC to like, hey, this is the recommended approach. And even if that recommended approach is to not percent encode it or to
Hmm.
be able to um, the rec. You need to be able to handle it if it's not percent encoded, but we recommend you percent encode it, for backwards compatibility purposes.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
cool. Well, thank you. I won't need to go run and do that then. I could probably do Credo though. Because I think Credo's also doing the equal sign at the end if I remember correctly, but I'll have to double check.
Mhm. Yep, yeah. And when you do it, just make sure to run it a few times because sometimes Akapai will spit it out with padding or without padding, depending on some of the contents of the invitation, how long it is, I guess.
Oh, interesting. Cool. Well, welcome Kim. Welcome Alberto. Uh, Officially, I guess, get started then. It's the 20th of August, Aries-vcx Community Call. Note that this is a Linux Foundation call, so the antitrust policy and code of conduct is in effect. So make sure we're following that and treating each other with respect. As for announcements, nothing new here beyond the release 0.65, but that's kind of old news at this point. Work has been going on, which has been really good. Going to get an update on what George was up to with the Aries H Aries agent test harness and the agenda. Um, for the agenda today, well, I guess before talking about the agenda, any announcements or work done that we want to call out? Cool. Um, for the agenda today, the other main topic I wanted to talk about was the Akamai to Open Wallet Foundation move. We've already talked some internally about this, but I figure I want to talk about that some on this call before the working group call tomorrow morning. Um, at least morning for me, I should say. Any other agenda items that we would like to discuss today? In particular, Kim, do you have anything you would like to bring up today since uh, you're freshly new to the call?
No, I don't have anything to bring up today.
Cool. All right. You want to talk about the test harness, George?
Yes, yeah, sure, thanks. Yeah, I suppose for visuals, would you mind pulling up the most recent PR? Oh, I can do it as well.
I
Um, all right, you can see that okay?
Yep.
Yeah, so this has sort of been ongoing a little bit for a couple weeks, but I'll get messages from Shell over at the AATH repo. I suppose I'm the contact point now for VCX AATH issues, which I'm totally fine with. Um, yeah, and so the first thing that was brought up a few weeks ago um, was about how one of the recent changes around handling the implicit invitations meant that now other more general forms of invitations and establishing connections were now failing as well. Um, and so that was a fix we made, I think, just before the last call, and it was merged in shortly after. It was just changing some of the flow around. But then, I alerted Shell about that, and uh, he said, it's still not working. What's going on? And the reason it wasn't working is because something changed in, I believe, the Hyperledger organization where the GitHub tokens that we were using for publishing to the Docker repository for Hyperledger um, was now demoted to a different default permission, and scavenged through some of the Discord, and a bunch of other Hyperledger people were starting to realize they also had that problem. So everyone's sort of been fixing their pipelines to explicitly call out the permission, which is, package write in our case, to allow us to publish to the Docker repository. Yeah, so that fix is now in, which means that now our pipeline should go back to publishing the images again, which means that those are the back channel images, such that the AATH, can now start pulling in the main tag of our images again, which should be the most recent. Yeah, and so therefore it should start working again. However, this push itself, this merging into our branch didn't actually end up pushing a new image like I was hoping it would. So our main tag of our Docker image for the back channel is still from 2 weeks ago. It's not actually updated. But the reason it didn't publish is because it had already been cached, so it had
Uh,
convinced itself that it had already published it.
and since we only adjusted in this PR, we only adjusted the action. It would not adjust the cache, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, nothing happened. Which, once we get through your PR here, James, then that'll indirectly trigger another posting of the image. So then we'll be
Yep.
covered again.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah. Anyway, that's my update.
Awesome. Will be good to have that be back up to date. Hopefully we can merge my PR here soon. I wonder with that, do you think we should wait to merge that until the Aries RFC discussion there is finished, or um,
Um, I'm
yeah,
not, yeah, it'd be good, but I'm not opposed to, you testing some of the other agents and seeing what they're doing. We just saw Akapi's, or at least on the version I was using, which I think was 12.1, 0.12.1, was returning it non-percent encoded, just, sort of a concatenation of the URL plus the base64 URL encoded. Um, so I suppose if other people are doing that, then maybe it's fine to do it as well. Um, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the RFC people say.
the other thing that I thought was interesting is I looked at the out of band v2, which is used for DIGCOM v2,
Hmm.
um, and that one, at least the example, uh, does not have padding according to my memory. There is no equal sign, and so no percentage coded equal sign either. Um, so given that the verbiage,
This is like the DITCOM spec, right?
yeah,
Diff, yeah.
within within the RFC that's mentioned in the out of band RFC, it's typically encoded, but if the data length is known implicitly, this can be avoided by skipping the padding altogether. That's what it appears to be what at least the V2 is doing, and is, I think, allowed from the V1 perspective. So what we could do is, given especially also that this is not a hard requirement, we could skip the padding from the base 64, just do unpadded, and then we won't actually have to, it doesn't matter if we percent encode it or not.
Yeah, I suppose that might break other agents who explicitly use a decoder that requires padding. I think that'd break them.
Hmm.
You'd hope that, they're using decoders that are lenient to padding or no padding, but it's possible they're expecting padding. Yeah.
Yeah, and Aries RC, the out of band RC does not specify whether it should be padded or unpadded.
Yeah. Yeah.
So theoretically, it should be padded based off of this, because it's not. It is not a. We do not have a static length, so it's not known implicitly.
Yeah, I've struggled with this over the past day or so about whether it's necessary or not. If it was necessary, then how come we can get away with using lenient decoders that don't care about padding or no padding? Um,
Within the URL.
yeah.
I think it becomes a problem where, like, for instance, if we took a if we took a standard invitation, and it becomes a problem if we want to put other query parameters here. If we have something that follows here, then it blows everything up if we don't do the percent encoding, for instance. But
oh
given
yeah,
that
yeah, definitely, yeah.
generally we haven't, then that's been fine for the most part. That might
Yes.
not have been your point, though.
No, so you're saying, yeah, the URL decoder might freak out if there's an out of context equals in there. Is
Uh,
that what you're referring to?
what I'm saying is that I think it would be a problem if we had additional query parameters. Given
Hmm.
that we don't, it seems like it's so far has been able to handle it without it being percent encoded.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Especially because I think from when I dug semi deep on this,
Mm.
uh, I think that the URL definition, if it finds it and it is not percent encoded, it's like supposed to match it. If a reserved character is found in a URI component and no delimiting rule is known for that character, then it's interpreted as that character. So I think it's like it. I think it's able to. It may be able to fall back on, even if we're stupid, if they're able to interpret it, given how we're using it.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good sentence. I hadn't read that part. Yeah, so it'll try its best to recover if you've used one of those reserved characters, but the context doesn't make sense for it to be a reserved character.
Yeah, I
Mm.
think that would be my guess of what's happening with that.
Yep. Yep. Um, yeah, well, what I was getting at is I I couldn't figure out why the padding was necessary at all. Why not just do unpadded?
Um, like within here, why not do unpadded?
Yeah, like did Timo say in that RFC chat that Credo might just use unpadded base64 encoding?
Let me see. Does this reflect what is being done in practice? Otherwise, it might be beneficial to use unpadded. I think Credo uses unpadded when doing base 64 URL by default.
Yeah, because like there's that statement in the spec about, if the data length is uh unknown, then yeah, if it's known implicitly, then you can skip it. But I guess otherwise use it. But yeah, I'm just not sure why
I
it's
haven't read
necessary.
this part actually, and I probably should have.
Hmm.
So really, this here makes it very explicit that the out of band RFC should mention that we want this to be unpadded. Otherwise, it should be padded.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I think that it's loose enough here that like I the thing that confuses me is that given this line here, like I don't know why the padding's useful if it's just going to be separated by, like if we have, for instance, here, it's going to have a and character at the end here that's going to be for another query parameter. So I don't know
Exactly.
why the length would matter, if that makes any sense.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, either the string terminates or you see an ampersand, it's going to be another query. Yeah.
I
Hmm.
suppose, however, this RFC for URLs or URIs is not specific to query parameters. So if you're using if you do something stupid, I say stupid, it may be stupid of slamming together two uh, base64 URL encoded things together, but not as like query parameters, you would know where to split it. That seems
Hmm.
like a contrived case, but I could see that being.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Yeah.
So I lean towards uh, what I think might make sense is to have it be unpadded by default, and then we will I'll pursue the conversation on the Aries RFCs, and then if that results in, hey, we should have this be padded and percent encoded, then we can update VCX to follow that, is what I
Mhm.
lean towards doing here.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Sounds good. And in the VCX setting as well, I'm not sure how much we do this, but it'd be nice if there was sort of a globally defined engine for that. You know how there's the different base64 engines that you can set up. We sort of just had one globally defined that says, we're lenient to padding or unpadding. But when you encode, it's unpadded. And if that was sort of a globally set up thing, rather than instantiating a bunch of engines all over the place, which I think
Mm.
is sort of what we do currently.
At least we're instanti like I feel like it's global in the sense that we're using the same engines in multiple places.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, the one worry I would have about doing it globally is that the RFCs have defined them differently, or somewhat differently, in that for instance, the attachments protocol, or I should say RFC, is more restrictive, uh, or at least specific um, than the out of band one, for instance.
I see. Yeah.
So there could be a case where they're like, this has to be unpadded. And in a different ROC, they say, this must be padded. So using a
Yep.
global in that place gives us problems.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Good point. Okay. It's good that they make a statement. Not required. Yeah.
And that it is, that you should be able to tolerate it, but code that writes it should emit the padding. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So I feel like something along
So,
these lines might be useful within the out of band RFC to clarify this specific problem, even if it needs to be backwards compatible, something that indicates what we're supposed to be doing.
yeah. Definitely.
Anyways, that's a good tangent there. um, talking about the Akamai Open Wallet Foundation move. Um, so I think that uh, I think it's worthwhile for us to continue, or the update from the VCX perspective moving to the Open Wallet Foundation is that I think it's an appropriate time for probably me to, with review from the other maintainers, to look at or to write up uh, us indicating that is where we want to move Aries-vcx to as well as part of this discussion, um, and make that a little bit more publicly known. And can voice that on tomorrow's working group call as well. I think that one of the big questions, one of the big open questions still is whether we as a Aries community want to move Aries as like an umbrella of maybe not all the projects. I don't know all the answers there, but like for instance, we could move Akapai and then move VCX as two separate projects, or there could be a umbrella Aries type project over at the Open Wallet Foundation potentially that Akapai and VCX get moved together, if that makes sense.
As a mono repo, or
No, in that there would be, for instance, one governing. I don't actually know. There would be one governance structure for.
So you mean like the Aries project itself, right? And
Yeah.
Yep.
yeah, so anything under like Aries, I think. Yeah, I was in the call. I think was it last week? Yeah, I think that's what they were mentioning. But can you help me remember, James? What was the conclusion on that, or is there no conclusion? Is it still like, is it going, is it something we need to talk to the rest of the community, whether it will be separate or together? Was there a
Yes,
conclusion on that, or is that
there
something
was
that's worth? Yeah.
there was no conclusion on that. That was something that they wanted to
Okay.
talk
Yeah.
about tomorrow specifically.
Well, I don't know. I like the strategy the Akapai guys are doing, where they're gonna move with the 1.0, right, version. And kind of get like this like fresh start, new look once they move to the Open Wallet Foundation. And I think, we're part of like that move with them. I think, it looks, it could be like a advantage, having, the BT Gov people also, be part of, in a sense, right, not actually be part of this a move for us as well. But I also like the idea that you said, James, where actually having that new framework done and then making the move also makes a lot of sense to me. So I'm sort of like divided on that. So I'm not sure what you think about that, or your thoughts, James.
The timing is one of the big questions in my mind. I think for VCX specifically, having the move happen once we have the framework completed makes a lot of sense from my perspective. But once we're actually there, being underneath like an umbrella type organization, I should say umbrella project, because we would be underneath the Open Wallet Foundation, and then there would be like an Aries project, for instance. That may be of benefit because then we don't have to have the same level of having um, a the governance specific to a project just for VCX. It could be the governance associated for Akapai and VCX, for instance. Could
Right.
lower some of our overhead of management and whatnot.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I'm pretty divided. I like both ideas. Again, I know VCX in itself has some already things that people over there can start using, right? So, not sure.
I think that one of the other things I was trying to find there's this is what I was looking for. So project lifecycle is what I was looking for. So within this, they have two they have different stages for their projects. So, and it's based off of how mature that project is. So, for instance, their Bifold is I believe Bifold and Credo are both growth projects. Akapai / Aries would be the first impact project. So there's impacts there. To the previous point though of whether or not we go at the same time as Akapai and whether or not we're in the same governing structure as them, it might be possible, I don't know, it might be possible that those aren't mutually exclusive and that we could set up a
Yeah.
umbrella project of Aries under OWF, and then in a month or two or however long it takes us to get the framework into the ready spot. When we're ready, then we move over into that same project. I don't know if that's an option. That'd be something we can discuss tomorrow.
Yeah, that would be like the ideal, right?
I think
But
so.
supposing that's not possible, I feel like I'm just hearing you out right now, like taking a look at this. I'd probably more inclined to move when they make that move as well, if it's possible. But I don't know, George, you're probably more, you're probably more senior in this repo. What are you thinking? Should we wait, or should we make the move as soon as they make the move as well?
Yeah, I think you guys have both said it pretty well. I think it's a win either way. We move with them, we share the sort of media splash in a sense. But if we move after the framework, then we're really hitting the ground running, I guess. That final option you mentioned as well, James, sounds pretty good. I don't really have a strong opinion, to be honest, about when it happens. Um, do we know the time frame of Akapai's potential move?
Yeah,
Weeks?
good question. Yeah. No, I'm
I
not
am
sure.
not
Do you know, James?
No, I'm not aware of a timeline as of right now. And also to be specific, this was not something. The follow up to one of your questions you had asked in a different call, George, is that this is the discussion from the Aries community perspective. Once
Hmm.
we have decided what we want to do from an Aries community perspective, this is going to get proposed to the OWF folks.
Yep.
And so there's a possibility they say, no, we're good, thanks.
Yeah.
I don't expect that, but like that conversation hasn't happened yet, and that's going to be happening after the Aries community decides what they want to do. Will be then moving to propose that to the OWF.
Yep, definitely.
Yep. I have a question. I'm not sure if anybody here maybe knows the answer to. The move to the Open Wallet Foundation, I guess it's in perspective to being more interoperable with, things like OIDC. In the future with Aries-vcx, how easy will it be to integrate that as the project stands and how we're planning to build out the framework itself? It seems to me from what I can see, because the project has been created in a modular way with crates and all, it'd be pretty simple to plug it in. I mean, I'm simple is like in terms of it's not all tied together and we have to kind of, scramble through the code and, plug that part in, but just basically create a crate, right? Connect that to, some of the sample agents, for example, that you're creating, James, and use that as a way to demonstrate that you can also use this other protocol, right? So, yeah, I just want to see what you guys think about that.
I will take a stab at it and let George correct me where I'm incorrect. I think my opinion is that since we are modular enough, it's we're pretty modular, so there's a lot of flexibility there, which means that I don't think we have significant development, extra development from previous architectural stupid mistakes that we've made. Beyond, so the only development that we'll need to do is related to OpenID for VC, because for instance, you have to do the OpenID part, the credential format part. I don't, because we're not going to be using, well, we may not be using a non-creds, for instance. But we also will be able to have the shared wallet, unless there's specific wallet needs there that can't use ASCAR. So from my perspective, I don't think that we've boxed ourselves into a corner. It's just the work related to OpenID and the credential formats we want to use there.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I was thinking as well.
Did I get anything wrong, George, from
No,
your
no, I
perspective?
definitely agree.
Okay.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah, we're set up to be modular. Like we literally have a module called Aries, right? And then that splits out into further modules. So you can imagine how a OID for VC module might fit alongside that. I suppose the challenge will be the point where you bring it all together, which, you know, might be in the framework.
Yep.
The framework might want to support Aries alongside OID for VC. And you know, those will be problems that happen when we get there, and we'll have, you know, leaders in Akapai and in Credo to, you know, reference and see what they did. I think, and James, I'm not really familiar with the Credo code base other than going on GitHub and seeing how they do a couple things when I get confused. But they're also set up in a modular way, right? Where they have these different sort of packages. Is that right?
Yes. Yes,
Yep.
there's multiple packages that have been created, and it's set up in a way that AFJ, well, Credo, is using dependency injection.
Hmm.
So as long as it meets the appropriate defined interface, you can inject it in. And I also think that there's ones where it's like, if it's there, it's going to do X, Y, and Z. That's when you have the capabilities of it. This gets used in a variety of places, like OpenID for VC, for instance. But also, for instance, the when it comes to the multi-platform, there's some React Native specific things, some Node specific things, in particular around like the file system and transports and maybe crypto. I don't remember on the crypto part. But yeah, so there's the modules will get initialized, according to my memory, will get initialized by the developer at runtime and will be injected via the agent config object. So I think to answer your question and then put a little bit on top, I think that we could potentially take a slightly different route in VCX of doing it by feature flags. Of you define what when you install the framework crate, for instance, you define what features you're looking for. So that could include DIDCOM, but it also could not, and only include OpenID for VC. And then that's what gets spat out on the when you're using it side of things.
Mhm.
I think there's benefit there from having it be static from the get-go. That might be a beneficial way that's more in line with the with Rust as a language.
Yep.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Cool. All right. Good to know. That's good news.
Good question. it's good to talk about it, especially because I'm like, this is what I think. And if George is like, oh no, there's issues here that I'm not aware of, I would rather have those be communicated.
No worries. But yeah, I suppose the point was there is giants that we can get help from and reference.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, that's a really good point, I think, George. And that's even a better, reason to also make that move, right?
Yep. Yep.
Well, cool. I think the action items here is for I will discuss. I'll bring this up as a point on the Aries working group call, and I will also draft a message to put in like a probably a GitHub issue or discussion thread and on Discord, indicating that VCX is moving is intending to move along with Akapai, or I should say, is intending to move the Open Wallet Foundation with some of the asterisks on timing.
Yep.
And I'll run that by y'all.
Cool. Sounds good.
All right, cool. Let us know if you need any help.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Awesome. Any other discussion topics for today?
No, just I know we owed you guys a couple of PRs with some of the stuff the team and I are trying to stitch together, and it seems like stitching this so there's two parts, right? We derailed a little bit experimenting with pro macros and seeing whether uh that work with the framework that James is building. So it took us a few days to actually find out that pro macros might not be there, right? As I mentioned in the last call. So we're switching back to some of the UDL approaches. Maybe sometime in the future we can definitely reconsider pro macros or doing some sort of hybrid type. But for now, looks like UDL would be the way. But as we mentioned previously, debugging UDL files is a bit tricky, especially when working with some crates like the ones you're creating, James. So sticking us a bit more with some of the learning curves there. But I'm hoping that this week we'll have at least something to show. And then also the XC framework we're building. We had some roadblocks there and some obstacles when building that script. Just trying to figure out how Unify is mapping like the header file with the Swift file and the binaries that it's generating, along with trying to understand the best way for consumers to use the XC framework, making sure that that's all they need to add to their project, right? And that's what we're planning to add to the mobile app that we have for testing, just to kind of showcase, right, what's possible on iOS using Unify. So with that, the engine does, export, this .a file, the .swift, and then the .h, and then the module map. So we're trying to bundle all that to get into an XC framework. And to a certain extent, it's worked, but we're just trying to figure out some of the smaller details. And but there's some learning curves for us there as well. So we've been experimenting a bit with that and just trying to make sure that we build the best thing that ultimately gets consumed appropriately by whoever wants to have this XC framework. So hopefully soon this week we'll have something to PR so you guys can take a look and give us your thoughts.
Cool. Yeah, it's definitely not easy. trying to figure out how to do it best with unify and compiling, especially on the Swift side, in my opinion. I'm not a big fan of iOS development. But maybe something you could look at, and maybe you already have, is what Matrix is doing on the Swift side, because I believe they have scripts set up to build and release their Rust SDK for Swift as an XE framework and on the Android side as well. And I think it should all be open source how they go about making those releases and packaging it up. Maybe there's some script that can be looked at.
Yeah, that's actually our next step. We took a look at unknown credits and saw what they're doing, but they are a bit different to what VCX is trying to do with
Yeah.
Unify. So the next step was actually to take a look at Matrix, but can you maybe say a little bit more, George? So because I see that, yeah, everything's open source. GitHub has like I could see like the SDKs for different things. So probably I should take a look at the Swift one. But I'm still trying to. I haven't dug deep into it just yet. But it looks like it might be separated, right? It's not like the way we're doing it, right? Like the engine, the Rust is connecting in the same repo, doing some Swift stuff in another folder, right? Seems like over there they have it all separate. So I'm trying to see where they're making that connection. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah, I sent a couple links in Zoom that I think might be helpful. But yeah, you're right. I think the Rust SDK, Matrix Rust SDK, has like some tools in it to build
Okay.
in the XE framework, and then they have a separate project which is the Swift, the Rust component Swift, which I think pulls it all together and maybe runs that script to combine it into an XC framework or something like that.
Okay, gotcha. All right, I'll take a look then. Yeah, so that's the plan for us right now. But thanks for the tip, George.
Cool. And yeah, just a note on how they're doing it in the Matrix Rust SDK. So like we have shell scripts, or at least we did have shell scripts for building the Android side of things, right? They've taken it a step further and they've built out this like CLI tool, which is sort of made for their project, and it's that X task CLI tool, which is the last link. So that's sort of equivalent to our shell scripts. They've put it into a Rust CLI.
Yeah, these
So
guys
it's still
seem to be
useful, just
very
not the exact same format.
Yeah, like if you dig through there, you'll still see, where they're calling onto the operating system to execute some command, which, it's sort of equivalent to our shell scripts, bash scripts.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. We'll definitely take a look then.
Not saying that we have to build out a CLI tool like them.
No,
Going
yeah,
above
these
and
guys
beyond.
seems to.
Yeah.
No,
Or
yeah,
just
I
like
got
this
you.
one.
Yeah. No, yeah. It's actually interesting. I was learning a little bit about them. They seem to be using like because I think what they are, right, George, are like a secure message protocol
Yeah.
service, right? And I thought it was interesting. They're using some like personal data stores, which seems very similar to what I'm hearing a lot lately with decentralized web nodes, which is actually pretty interesting. So maybe it's even something the project can end up using at some point, since um, they do have like that decentralized mindset. But yeah, I'll take a look at some of these Rust SDKs.
Cool. Yep. Yeah, no worries.
All right, cool.
I have spent way too much time trying to make these URLs work.
You got it to work. Nice.
Something bizarre of like, I think Zoom required me to click on them. Like, if I copy it, it doesn't give me this URL. It gives me a Zoom URL or something weird. Anyways, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Alberto. It's good to hear that there's progress happening there, and excited to see the outcomes of that.
Of course.
And I think with that, some really good topics today. I think that's probably good for today.
Sorry, James. I just found one more link, which I think is
Yeah,
even more specific than some of the ones I sent. So have a look at that one as well.
thank you.
All right, cool. All right.
All right. Well, I think with that, looking forward to the work that we do and the discussions we'll have, and we'll see you all at the next call in 2 weeks. Thank you, everybody.
Cool. Thank you. See you
All
next
right.
time.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.